Every classroom tells a story. A teacher asks a question, a student raises a hand, another remains silent, and someone at the back of the room goes unnoticed. These may appear to be ordinary moments, but they can shape whether students feel included, respected and confident, or excluded, embarrassed and invisible. Teachers communicate far more than subject knowledge. Their words, tone, gestures, and patterns of attention send powerful messages about who is capable, whose ideas matter, and who truly belongs. This video explores how everyday interactions between teachers and students create inclusion or reinforce exclusion in Pakistani classrooms, drawing on the study Exclusion or Inclusion. An analysis of teachers' words and actions in Pakistani classrooms. Inclusive education is often understood narrowly as the placement of children with disabilities or special educational needs in mainstream schools. However, inclusion is much broader than physical access. A genuinely inclusive classroom allows every learner to participate, express ideas, make mistakes, and feel valued. It recognizes differences in gender, language, religion, ethnicity, social class, learning pace, and cognitive ability. Inclusion is therefore not only about who is present in the classroom. It is also about who receives attention, who is encouraged to speak, who is given enough time to think, and whose identity is treated with dignity. Inclusion is created through relationships, participation, and a shared sense of belonging. The research drew on classroom observations conducted as part of a large-scale study of science and mathematics teaching across Pakistan. The study included 436 teachers from 96 schools across 6 geographical regions. It covered public and private schools, single-sex and co-educational settings, and classrooms in grades 5, 6, and 8. 15 trained observers used a validated classroom observation tool to document the physical environment, classroom interactions, and teaching and learning activities. After the observations, the researchers wrote reflective accounts and discussed what they had seen. These discussions formed a metalogue, which is a reflective dialogue through which the observers collectively interpreted patterns of inclusion and exclusion. 3 central themes emerged from the analysis. The first theme was teacher-led exclusion. Observers documented exclusion through sarcasm, humiliation, scolding, dismissive comments, and unequal treatment. In one mathematics lesson, a girl was invited to solve a problem on the board. When she took slightly longer than expected, the teacher told her to return to her seat because she was taking too much time. In another classroom, a teacher mocked a student's physical appearance after she failed to answer a question. These incidents may last only a few seconds, but their consequences can be significant. They can associate participation with embarrassment and discourage students from asking questions or attempting difficult tasks. Exclusion often begins not with formal removal, but with an apparently simple comment. Some exclusionary practices reflected wider social inequalities. In one classroom, after boys answered questions that girls could not, the teacher stated that boys were always better than girls. Such comments do more than describe a single classroom moment. They reinforce the belief that intelligence and academic competence are naturally associated with boys. Observers also recorded teachers identifying students primarily by their religious identity and making derogatory comments about their families. In one particularly concerning example, classmates later repeated the insulting language used by the teacher. This demonstrates the influence of social learning. Teachers do not only communicate academic knowledge, they also model how people should be treated. When prejudice is expressed by an authority figure, students may reproduce it in their own relationships. Not all exclusion was deliberate. In many classrooms, teachers remained at the front and interacted mainly with students seated in the first few rows. Learners at the back received less attention, monitoring, and support. The teacher may not intend to exclude these students, but the effect can be similar. Some learners participate repeatedly, while others gradually become invisible. The observations also documented physical punishment, removal from lessons, and students being made to stand for extended periods. Although teachers sometimes justified these actions as necessary for maintaining discipline, they removed students from active learning. In one case, a child displaying possible behavioral or attention-related difficulties was singled out for punishment. Inclusive teaching therefore requires teachers to recognize how routine practices may unintentionally marginalize learners. The second theme was student-led exclusion. Observers witnessed students refusing to work, disrupting lessons, and behaving disrespectfully towards teachers. In one classroom, a group of boys dismissed the instructions of a female teacher, raising questions about both classroom authority and gendered attitudes. When teachers struggled to manage disruptive behavior, they sometimes resorted to corporal punishment or called another authority figure to intervene. This created a damaging cycle. Student disruption led to punitive teacher responses. Punishment increased resentment and disengagement, and the weakened relationship contributed to further disruption. The findings therefore show that exclusion is not always imposed in one direction. It can be co-created through repeated interactions between teachers and students. Breaking this cycle requires constructive classroom management, emotional regulation, and mutual respect. The third theme concerned teacher-student relationships as the foundation of inclusion. The researchers observed several moments in which teachers protected students' confidence and turned mistakes into learning opportunities. In one mathematics lesson, a student believed that the teacher had made an error. Rather than reacting defensively, the teacher calmly explained that the student may have confused two concepts. In another classroom, a learner reversed two numbers while solving a problem. Instead of allowing classmates to ridicule him, the teacher encouraged him to identify the mistake independently. When he corrected it, she celebrated his understanding. These examples show that inclusive teachers do not lower expectations. They maintain high expectations while creating the emotional safety students need to participate, question, and take intellectual risks. Inclusive classrooms were often built through small but meaningful gestures. Teachers asked whether everyone had completed the task before erasing the board. They encouraged students to answer even when they were uncertain. They listened patiently, used respectful forms of address, and allowed learners sufficient time to think. Some teachers openly acknowledged their own mistakes and apologized when students corrected them. Such humility did not weaken their authority. Instead, it created psychological safety, the feeling that students could express themselves, ask questions, and make mistakes without humiliation. The study shows that teacher-student relationships are not separate from academic teaching. They are part of pedagogy itself. When students feel heard and respected, they are more likely to participate, persist in difficult tasks, and support their classmates. This study offers several important lessons. First, inclusion is not merely the absence of discrimination. It is an active practice that protects dignity, anticipates marginalization, and ensures equitable participation. Second, teachers' behavior shapes peer behavior. Respect can spread through a classroom, but prejudice can spread as well. Third, exclusion may be intentional or unconscious. Teachers therefore need opportunities to reflect critically on their language, discipline, assumptions, and patterns of attention. Fourth, inclusive education should become a compulsory component of teacher preparation. Teachers require practical knowledge of differentiated instruction, inclusive assessment, child rights, neurodiversity, socio-emotional learning, and constructive classroom management. Finally, inclusive classrooms require supportive school leadership, diverse teaching workforces, professional learning communities, and strong school-community relationships. The deepest lesson is simple. Every classroom interaction communicates who belongs. A teacher's response to a mistake, a question, or a difference can either close a door or open one.